In the year 1895, nestled deep within the Carpathian Mountains, a small village lived in the shadow of ancient tales. Stories passed down from generations spoke of strange occurrences on the highest peak of place where few dared to venture. One cold, misty evening, a group of villagers set out to investigate the mysterious disappearances that had plagued their community. As they ascended the rugged terrain, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The deeper they ventured into the mountains, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. Unseen eyes seemed to watch them, and the air grew colder with every step. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. The door creaked open with a soft push, revealing an interior covered in dust and cobwebs, as if untouched for decades. But it wasn't the eerie emptiness of the cabin that froze them in place. It was the sight of strange symbols etched into the wooden walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. As they examined the symbols, a low, guttural growl echoed from the darkness outside. The villagers quickly realized they were not alone. Something ancient and malevolent had been awakened, and it was hungry. As night fell, they found themselves trapped in the cabin, surrounded by an overwhelming darkness that seemed to pulse with life. Their lanterns flickered, casting long, twisting shadows that danced on the walls. The growls grew louder, closer, until they could feel the hot breath of the creature on their necks. The mountain had claimed its victims before, and it was about to do so again. The villagers huddled together in the center of the cabin, their breaths shallow and quick. The air felt thick, as if it were pressing in on them, suffocating any hope of escape. Outside, the growling ceased, replaced by a silence so profound it seemed to swallow sound itself. But they could feel it, whatever was out there circling, waiting. One of the villagers, a young man named Tomas, tightened his grip on the only weapon they had, a rusty old axe they'd found near the door. "We can't just sit here," he whispered, his voice trembling despite his bravado. "We need to find a way out." An elderly woman, known in the village as a healer, shook her head. "There is no running from this, Tomas. The mountain has its own rules, its own power. We must face it." Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost crept up the windows, and their breath became visible in the frigid air. Then, from the darkest corner of the cabin, a faint light began to glow. It wasn't the warm, welcoming light of a fire, but a cold, unnatural luminescence. Slowly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, gaunt man dressed in tattered clothing from another era, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly blue light. The villagers recoiled in terror, but the figure raised a skeletal hand, gesturing for silence. "You have trespassed where you do not belong," he said, his voice like the creak of ancient wood. "This mountain is not for the living." Tomas stepped forward, his knuckles white around the axe handle. "What do you want from us?" The figure's eyes narrowed, and the cabin seemed to groan under the weight of his presence. "You seek to uncover what should remain buried. The mountain protects its secrets. But now that you are here, you must make a choice: leave behind one of your own as an offering, or none of you shall leave at all." The villagers gasped in horror. The idea of sacrificing one of their own was unthinkable, but so was the alternative. Outside, the wind howled again, and they could hear the growls return, this time closer, hungrier. The healer spoke up, her voice steady. "If we refuse?" The figure's cold smile chilled them to the bone. "Then the mountain will claim you all, as it has claimed countless before you." Desperation clawed at their minds. They had come seeking answers, but now they faced an impossible decision. Time was running out. The creature outside grew restless, and they knew the night would only get darker. But as they debated their grim fate, Tomas noticed something a small, hidden door in the floor, covered in dust and nearly invisible. Could it lead to a way out? Or would it only lead them deeper into the mountain's dark embrace? With no time left to hesitate, Tomas made his choice. "Follow me," he whispered to the others, pointing to the hidden door. "It's our only chance." But as they moved to lift the door, the glowing figure spoke once more, his voice echoing with finality. "You may flee, but the mountain never forgets." With that ominous warning, They descended into the darkness below, leaving behind the eerie cabin and the malevolent presence above. But as they ventured deeper into the earth, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had only traded one nightmare for another. And the mountain watched them still,